From the summer of 2018 to the summer of 2019, more than a dozen Americans fly to the Dominican Republic on vacation and never come back. Miranda Schaup-Werner takes a drink from the minibar on the day she checks in, and within hours she dies in front of her husband. 5 days later, 2 more bodies are found in a neighboring hotel, the same ending at different hotels in different cities, among people of different ages: pulmonary edema, sudden collapse, death. The FBI conducts an investigation and announces natural causes. But what exactly that means, no one explains. This is the story of a series of mysterious deaths that never got an answer. The Dominican Republic occupies the eastern part of the island of Hispaniola and welcomes more than 6 million tourists every year. The pristine white beaches of Punta Cana, turquoise water, all-inclusive hotels with pools, buffets, and unlimited alcohol. For millions of Americans, it's an affordable and trusted destination for a family vacation, an anniversary, or a honeymoon. Prices are lower than at most Caribbean resorts. The flight from New York takes less than 4 hours. Paradise you can afford without years of saving up. In June of 2018, Yvette Monique Sport, a 51-year-old resident of Pennsylvania, flies to the Bahia Principe Hotel for her first vacation in 8 years. She arrives with friends and her fiancé. That evening, Yvette has a drink from the minibar in her room and goes to bed. During the night, her fiancé hears a strange gurgling sound. By morning, he discovers that Yvette is no longer breathing. She was 51, and until that evening, she had no health complaints. A month later, in July of 2018, David Harrison, a 45-year-old man from Maryland, flies to the Hard Rock Hotel and Casino in Punta Cana to celebrate an anniversary. After snorkeling, he returns to his room and says he doesn't feel well. The next morning, his wife finds him in bed, his body drenched in sweat, David dead. The official cause, a heart attack. 2 cases at 2 different hotels, a month apart. Different states, different ages, different circumstances. Local authorities classify each case separately and close the files. No one sees a connection. For Dominican Republic statistics, these are simply 2 unfortunate incidents out of millions of stays. But behind the facade of tropical paradise, something is already happening. It's just that nobody notices yet. This invisibility continues into the new year. In January of 2019, Jerry Curran, a 78-year-old retired police officer from Ohio who recently moved to Florida, flies with his wife to the Dreams Resort in Punta Cana. On the very first evening, they go to dinner and Jerry orders drinks. That night, he starts feeling sick. He spends the next 2 days in bed, hoping it's just acclimatization. His condition worsens and he's rushed to a hospital. Doctors put him on a ventilator and take him into surgery. 8 hours later, Curran is dead. The death certificate lists cerebral hypoxia, pulmonary edema, subdural hematoma, and severe traumatic brain injury. His case stands out from the rest. The head trauma could point to a fall or a complication rather than poisoning. But his family includes him in the overall count, because it started the same way: a resort, a drink, a sudden decline. That same March, Jerome Jester Jr., a 31-year-old man from Georgia, flies to the Dominican Republic for a weekend getaway with his sister, staying at one of the island's resort hotels. He buys a soda that tastes strange to him and tells his mother about it over the phone. She never hears his voice again. Jerome dies. He was 31 years old with no chronic health conditions. The diagnosis is the same: pulmonary edema. In early April, Robert Bell Wallace, a 67-year-old Californian, flies to the Hard Rock Hotel for his stepson's wedding. Around midnight on April 10th, he checks into his room. The following day, he pours himself a scotch from the minibar. Almost immediately, severe symptoms set in, including internal bleeding, and his condition deteriorates rapidly. The hotel doctor monitors him for 2 days, and on April 13th decides hospitalization is necessary. On April 14th, Wallace dies in the hospital. His family never receives a clear diagnosis. In late April, the body of John Quoirin is found at another hotel, a former businessman from New Jersey, brother of TV personality Barbara Corcoran from Shark Tank. He had heart problems, and his case is quickly closed. 4 people in 4 months across several different hotels. But each case is handled in isolation. Neither the press nor the authorities are connecting the dots. The picture starts coming together in late May of 2019, when 3 Americans die at a single hotel complex within 5 days. On May 25th, Miranda Schaup-Werner, a 41-year-old psychotherapist from Allentown, Pennsylvania, arrives with her husband Daniel at the luxury Bahia Príncipe Bougainville. They're celebrating their 9th wedding anniversary. On the day they check in, Miranda takes a drink from the minibar in their room. Soon she starts feeling ill. She collapses right in front of her husband, and they can't save her. The hotel issues a statement. Miranda had heart problems, and her husband supposedly confirmed this. The family immediately disputes that claim. The death certificate lists respiratory failure and pulmonary edema. 5 days later, on May 30th, at the neighboring Grand Bahia Príncipe La Romana, part of the same resort complex, a hotel employee knocks on a guest room door. A couple from Maryland hasn't shown up for checkout. When the door is opened, inside they find the bodies of Edward Nathaniel Holmes, 63, and Cynthia Ann Day, 49. They had checked in on the exact same day Miranda died, but until this moment, no one had connected the two cases. The preliminary autopsy reveals the same diagnosis as Miranda's: fluid in the lungs, respiratory arrest. The couple shows signs of internal bleeding and organ damage. Holmes is found to have an enlarged heart and liver cirrhosis, signs of pre-existing conditions. 3 bottles of pills are found in the room, including prescription oxycodone at a 5 milligram dosage. But the same diagnosis, pulmonary edema, applies to Miranda, who had no cirrhosis and no prescription medications. 3 deaths at one complex within 5 days, and the same ending. That identical ending becomes the tipping point. In early June of 2019, news of 3 deaths at a single resort complex within 5 days hits CNN, ABC, CBS, and Fox News. The headlines all carry the same alarming tone: mysterious deaths of Americans at Dominican hotels. The story instantly captures the nation's attention. Journalists start digging and quickly discover that Schaup-Werner, Holmes, and Day aren't the first. Within days, earlier cases surface. Yvette Monique Sport and David Harrison in 2018, Jerry Curran, Jerome Jester, Robert Wallace, and John Corcoran earlier in 2019. Scattered episodes that had existed in isolation for months suddenly line up in a chain. Similar symptoms, similar circumstances, the same ending. The overall pattern is terrifying. Healthy middle-aged people, alcohol or a drink from the room, minibar, sudden deterioration, rapid death. The FBI joins the investigation and begins assisting Dominican authorities. Agents collect beverage samples from minibars at several hotels and ship them to the forensic lab in Quantico for toxicological analysis. Meanwhile, the victims' families start finding each other. Lawyers, relatives, friends exchange details and notice the same recurring elements: the minibar, a drink, collapse. A spokesperson for the Schaup-Werner family goes before the cameras with a phrase that becomes the face of the entire crisis: "We don't understand what's happening here." Dominican authorities respond differently. The health minister at a press conference calls the media coverage fake news and an unfounded negative campaign. The U.S. ambassador in Santo Domingo states there is no evidence linking the cases. The government's position is clear. The panic is overblown. Tourism is safe. But the families hear not reassurance in these words. They hear a refusal to search for the truth. That refusal to search for the truth doesn't stop the deaths. On June 10th, in Punta Cana at the Excellence Resorts, the body of Layla Cox is found, a 53-year-old woman from Staten Island, New York. She's dead in her room. The hotel claims the cause was a heart attack, citing a report from the local medical examiner. Layla's son, Will Cox, doesn't accept that answer. He steps before the journalists and says something that dozens of outlets pick up: "I truly believe that had she been anywhere else in the world, she would be alive." 3 days later, on June 13th, in the town of Sosua on the northern coast of the Dominican Republic, the body of Joseph Allen is discovered in a room at the Terra Linda Resort, a 55-year-old man from New Jersey. He had flown in for a friend's birthday. The night before, he complained about feeling unwell. By morning, he was found dead. His brother sends a letter to Senator Bob Menendez. Before the trip, Joseph had undergone a full medical examination, and the results were perfect. On June 17th, at the Boca Chica Resort near Santo Domingo, Vittorio Caruso dies, a 56-year-old pizzeria owner from Long Island. According to his relatives, he drank something, after which severe respiratory distress set in. Caruso is rushed by ambulance to the hospital, but they can't save him. 3 new cases in a single week of June. 3 different hotels, 3 different cities, 3 different coasts of the island. If anyone could still explain the cluster at Bahia Principe as a problem at one specific hotel, that theory falls apart. Punta Cana, Sosua, Boca Chica, victims are appearing across the entire country, as if the source of the threat isn't tied to one location, but distributed throughout the entire Dominican hospitality system. A threat distributed across the entire country turns out to be even more frightening than it seemed. Some tourists are dying after they have already returned home. Susan Simono, from the small town of Luling, Louisiana, gets married on May 11, 2019. Together with her husband Keith Williams, they fly to Punta Cana for their honeymoon. The couple spends several days at the resort and returns to Louisiana. Shortly after landing, Susan is hospitalized. Doctors discover fluid in her lungs, the very same edema that appears in nearly every previous case. On June 18th, Susan dies at a hospital in Louisiana. Just over a week has passed since her return from the Dominican Republic. Her case is more frightening than the others. It shows that symptoms may not appear immediately, but days after contact with an unknown source, a person can fly home feeling perfectly fine and die on their own soil. On June 25th, 46-year-old Khalid Adkins from Denver, Colorado, boards a flight home from the Dominican Republic. He starts feeling sick while still in the air, vomiting in the airplane restroom. After landing, he's hospitalized. Doctors tell his family his kidneys are failing. Adkins dies in the hospital. The exact cause of death is never determined. By the end of June 2019, the media counts no fewer than 11 American tourists who have died in the Dominican Republic, or shortly after returning from there. The youngest was 31. The oldest was 78. Most appeared healthy before the trip, had passed medical checkups, had no chronic conditions. The common thread the families see: a drink in the room, rapid deterioration, death. But there is still no official confirmation of this connection. While there's no official confirmation, the media and experts put forward their own theories. The first and loudest: counterfeit alcohol. Methanol, a lethally dangerous industrial alcohol, regularly makes its way into bootleg drinks around the world. Even a small dose can cause blindness, organ failure, and death. According to an international study from 2018, 29% of all alcohol sold in the Dominican Republic is illegal, nearly a third of the market, with no quality control, no certification, no safety guarantees. Rolling Stone, Vice, and NPR publish investigations into the scale of the problem. Journalists track down surviving tourists who share suspicious details. A woman from New York says a bottle of 7-Up from the minibar in her room had a sharp smell of bleach. Several other travelers describe a strange taste in drinks from hotel minibars: chemical, bitter, unfamiliar. Hotels respond. The Hard Rock Hotel and Casino in Punta Cana makes a drastic decision and removes minibars from every single room. Management announces that from now on, all alcohol on the resort grounds will be exclusively brand name, shipped directly from the United States. This decision sounds almost like an admission. If the minibars were safe, why remove them? The methanol theory logically explains the symptoms: pulmonary edema, respiratory failure, organ damage. It explains the geographic spread too. If counterfeit alcohol comes from one or a few suppliers, it could end up in hotel minibars across the entire country. And it explains the randomness. Not every bottle contains poison, so out of millions of tourists, only a handful die. The ones unlucky enough to get the wrong bottle. Samples from the minibars are already at the FBI lab in Quantico. Everyone is waiting for the toxicology results. While everyone waits for the minibar analysis, another theory is gaining traction. And this one isn't about what tourists drank, but what they breathed. In the tropical climate of the Dominican Republic, hotels regularly treat rooms for mosquitoes, cockroaches, and other insects. For fumigation, they use powerful chemical agents, organophosphates and aluminum phosphide. These are highly toxic substances that, with improper dosing, or if guests check in too soon after treatment, can cause severe poisoning. Several tourists who stayed at those same hotels and survived start telling journalists about a strange experience. They describe a sharp, intense chemical smell in their rooms. Nausea, uncontrollable salivation, profuse sweating, tearing eyes, abdominal cramps. Symptoms that started shortly after checking in. A forensic science professor at Rutgers University in New Jersey reviews the available materials and publicly states the clinical picture among the victims is consistent with pesticide poisoning. At this point, a legal precedent emerges that sharply shifts the focus. A couple from Colorado files a civil lawsuit against the owners of the Gran Bahia Principe La Romana, the very hotel where Holmes and Day died. The Colorado couple claims they were poisoned by insecticides during their stay at the same hotel back in June of 2018. Their treating physician confirmed the diagnosis: insecticide poisoning. They spent several nights in their room, and with each passing day they felt worse. Headaches, vomiting, difficulty breathing. The Colorado couple's lawsuit turns the public conversation on its head. If the problem isn't the drinks but the very air inside the rooms, the scale of the issue could be entirely different. You can choose not to open the minibar, but you have to breathe in your room. You have to breathe in your room. But no authority is rushing to test what exactly has saturated the air. The victims' families find themselves in a position where answers come neither from Dominican authorities nor from American diplomats. And they decide to act on their own. Lawyers for the families of Edward Holmes and Cynthia Day commission an independent autopsy in the United States. The family of Miranda Schaup-Werner also sends materials for independent examination. Senator Bob Menendez, previously contacted by Joseph Allen's brother, publicly demands answers from Dominican authorities. On the other side of the ocean, the position remains unchanged. The Dominican Republic's Minister of Tourism addresses journalists and insists more than 6 million tourists visited the country that year, and a few deaths represent a statistical norm. The mortality rate among American tourists, he says, does not exceed the averages for other Caribbean destinations. The U.S. Embassy in Santo Domingo supports this line. There is no evidence at this time linking the cases. For the families, this argument sounds insulting. Their loved ones are not statistics, but real people who died under identical circumstances. The relatives see a system that protects the economic interests of a multi-billion-dollar industry. Tourism brings the Dominican Republic roughly $7.5 billion a year and accounts for 1/5 of the country's entire economy. Acknowledging a systemic problem means crashing that economy. The families understand that their grief has collided with a state machine for which the truth is economically inconvenient. All they can do is wait for the FBI results and the independent examinations. The wait ends in October of 2019. The FBI publishes the toxicology results for 3 key cases: Miranda Schaup-Werner, Edward Holmes, and Cynthia Day. The conclusion from the Quantico laboratory: all 3 died of natural causes. No methanol detected in the samples, no organophosphate compounds detected, none of the suspected toxins found. The State Department issues an official statement. The FBI's findings are consistent with the conclusions of Dominican authorities. Investigators on site and in the lab conducted what the department describes as a thorough and extensive investigation. The case is effectively closed. For the families, this sounds like a verdict, but a verdict without an explanation. The analysis thoroughly answers what was not present: not methanol, not pesticides, not poison. But it doesn't answer the main question: what actually happened? How did healthy people of different ages, from different states, at different hotels, independently of one another, all die with identical symptoms? Natural causes is not a diagnosis. It's an acknowledgement that the specific cause was never determined. None of the theories, counterfeit alcohol, pesticides, systemic negligence, and room maintenance, has been fully confirmed or definitively ruled out. Each was merely excluded based on the specific samples that were available for testing. But the absence of a toxin in a few bottles doesn't mean it wasn't present in others. The absence of pesticides in the blood weeks after death doesn't mean they weren't in the air of the room. Media attention to the story begins to fade. There are plenty of other headlines. But for the families, the story hasn't ended. It simply stopped being everyone else's problem. For the industry, however, the problem hasn't gone anywhere. In the summer of 2019, American tourist bookings to the Dominican Republic collapse. According to travel platforms, the decline ranges from 74 to 84% compared to the same period the previous year. Around 60% of travel agents across America cancel their clients' trips to the island. Comedian and television host Steve Harvey moves his annual Sand and Soul Festival out of the Dominican Republic to another country. Airlines report empty flights. For a nation critically dependent on tourism, this is a systemic blow. The government responds with a package of reforms. A National Tourism Safety Committee is established, bringing together 16 government agencies, including the military and national police, along with private hotel associations. A multilingual emergency communication center for tourists opens in Punta Cana. Surveillance cameras in hotel common areas are connected to a unified 911 emergency system. Staff are required to conduct mandatory safety briefings at every check-in. Every room now includes emergency procedure instructions. Government hotel inspections expand. They check medical facilities, swimming pools, food and beverage delivery systems, fire safety equipment. All these measures look impressive, but critics point to a paradox. If the cause of the deaths is natural causes, as the FBI concluded, then why such radical reforms? And if the reforms are necessary, it means problems existed, and the system knew about them, or should have known. The government simultaneously denies the existence of a threat and spends resources to eliminate it. This paradox grows even sharper a year later, when a massive wave of poisonings erupts within the Dominican Republic itself, this time among locals. In 2020 and 2021, the country is swept by a surge of deaths from counterfeit alcohol. By May of 2021, the death toll exceeds 152, with another 444 hospitalized for severe poisoning. The victims are predominantly poor Dominicans, consumers of an illegal spirit called Quoirin, and counterfeit versions of well-known alcohol brands. Quoirin is a homemade moonshine sold without labeling or any quality control. People drink it because it costs next to nothing. At the same time, police uncover underground operations where bottles of famous rum and whiskey brands are filled with a surrogate containing methanol and released onto the market. The government declares counterfeit alcohol a matter of national security. Police conduct raids, shut down dozens of underground operations, and arrest the owners. The scale of the problem uncovered during these operations is staggering. Illegal alcohol permeates the entire country, from the slums to the resort zones. The crisis of 2020 through 2021 forces a retrospective look at the events of 2019. The FBI did not find methanol in specific samples from minibars at several hotels, but that doesn't mean counterfeit alcohol wasn't circulating through the broader supply chain. The problem of illegal spirits existed long before 2019 and continued long after. It was simply invisible before because its victims were locals, not foreign tourists. The Americans who died in hotels in 2019 may have been the visible face of an invisible epidemic whose true scale only became clear when the victims numbered in the dozens and hundreds. As of today, not one of the 11 cases has a definitive and indisputable explanation. The FBI closed its investigation with a finding of natural causes, but without specifying the actual mechanism of death. Dominican authorities hold the same line. Independent autopsies commissioned by several families in the United States did not lead to any major revelations, at least none that were made public. The Colorado couple's lawsuit alleging pesticide poisoning at Bahia Principe remains the only legal precedent, but it involves survivors, not the deceased. The hotels continue to operate. Some implemented reforms, but to the families, it looks more like an indirect admission of a problem than a solution. Bahia Principe remains one of the largest resort complexes in the Caribbean. Tourist traffic has recovered. Dominican beaches still rank among the most visited in the Western Hemisphere. But for the families of Miranda Shoup-Werner, Edward Holmes, and Cynthia Day, Robert Wallace, Layla Cox, Joseph Allen, and the others, there is still no answer. More than a dozen people left for vacation, just to relax, celebrate an anniversary, spend a honeymoon, attend a stepson's wedding. They checked into a room, grabbed a drink from the minibar, and never came back. This case remains one of the most disturbing unsolved series of tourist deaths in recent history. The system that was supposed to protect them either failed or was never designed to protect anyone in the first place. The truth remains somewhere between tropical paradise and toxicology reports, in a space where it's more convenient not to ask questions. A 27-year-old newlywed, happy, full of plans for the future, and suddenly dead by the pool of someone else's hotel. She fell from the 10th floor, but not from her own room, from a room where 5 strange men had been partying. What happened behind the closed door of apartment 10E is a question that still has no answer. Kirsty Emma Maxwell, born Adamson, came into the world on the 1st of September, 1989, in Leith, a suburb of Edinburgh. She grew up in Livingston, a small Scottish town west of the capital, surrounded by green hills and quiet streets. Kirsty was one of those people everyone gravitates toward. Open, dependable, always ready to listen. Friends called her someone you could trust with any secret. She was a true pillar for her loved ones, for her parents Brian and Denise, and for her younger brother Ryan. After school, Kirsty worked at the Lloyd's banking group. Her colleagues valued her for her reliability and professionalism. But the most important thing in her life was family. She and Adam Maxwell had known each other for 10 years before they married in September 2016. The young couple was looking for a new home and dreaming of children. They were truly happy and had no idea they would never even make it to their first wedding anniversary together. In late April 2017, Kirsty and her girlfriends headed to Benidorm, a popular Spanish resort on the Costa Blanca coast. Benidorm is a city of skyscrapers, white beaches, and endless bars, a place where thousands of Brits flock every year for a holiday. The occasion was a joyful one, a hen party for one of her close friends. A big group had come along, about 20 girls from Scotland. The mood was festive. They checked into the Pema Apartments on the evening of the 28th of April. Kirsty and her friends settled into apartment 9A on the 9th floor. The Pema Apartments is a typical Benidorm high-rise with dozens of flat-style rooms, long corridors, and balconies overlooking the pool. The floors are identical in layout. Apartment 9A on the 9th floor sits directly below apartment 10A on the 10th. But apartment 10E, the very one Kirsty somehow ended up in, was at the opposite end of the corridor. To get there, you would need to go up one floor and walk the entire length of the hallway. Accidentally mixing up the rooms would have been extremely difficult. The first evening was fun and carefree. The girls strolled along Benidorm's famous promenade, popped into bars, danced, and celebrated their friend's upcoming wedding. It was the kind of laid-back holiday everyone dreams of. Late at night, closer to the early hours of the 29th of April, the whole group returned to the hotel. Kirsty went to bed. Her friends later confirmed that around 7 in the morning, Kirsty was still right there in her own bed, sleeping peacefully. Everything was normal. Nothing hinted at what was coming. And then begins the mystery that has haunted investigators, journalists, and the family for years. In less than an hour, something inexplicable happened. Somehow she got up, left apartment 9A, went up to the 10th floor, walked down the corridor to the opposite end, and ended up in apartment 10E. At that time, a group of 5 British men from the town of Hucknall, near Nottingham, were staying there. They had come to Benidorm for a stag do, like a mirror image of Kirsty's hen party. Their names were Joseph Graham, Ricky Gammon, Anthony Holhouse, Callum Northridge, and Daniel Bailey. Kirsty did not know a single one of them. These men were complete strangers to her. At 7:50 in the morning, on the 29th of April, Kirsty Maxwell's body was found by the hotel pool. She had fallen from the 10th floor balcony and was discovered on the concrete slabs next to the pool. Death was instantaneous, caused by multiple injuries incompatible with life. A security camera by the pool captured only the last 3 seconds, but not the fall itself. Nobody saw exactly how Kirsty ended up on the other side of the balcony railing. Spanish police arrived at the scene and detained one of the men the same day, Joseph Graham. According to the investigation, he was on or near the balcony at the moment of the fall. When officers arrived, Graham was shirtless. However, 2 days later, on the 1st of May, a court released him on bail. The other 4 men were questioned but not even detained. All 5 soon left Spain and returned to England. The version Joseph Graham gave to police and later repeated before a judge went like this. Early that morning, Kirsty allegedly burst into their room in a state of extreme agitation. She was acting, in his words, crazy, like she was drunk or on drugs. Graham claimed he initially mistook her for the girlfriend of one of his mates, who had been staying with them in another room. He supposedly asked Kirsty to leave, but she rushed into the bathroom and was very distressed. There, according to Graham, she tried to climb through a small interior window in the bathroom that opens onto the kitchen. When that failed, she dashed across the entire apartment to the balcony and vaulted over the low railing. Graham also floated the idea of sleepwalking. Perhaps Kirsty had simply been walking in her sleep. For Kirsty's family, this version did not hold up to any scrutiny. Her father, Brian, and mother, Denise, were categorical. Their daughter had never in her life taken drugs. She had never suffered from sleepwalking, not a single episode in all 27 years. She had absolutely no reason to take her own life. She was a newlywed, brimming with plans for the future. It's insane to suggest she took her own life. She had everything to live for, said Adam Maxwell, making no effort to hide his anger. Kirsty's husband immediately sensed that something dark had happened in that room. I believe something terrible happened behind closed doors, and those men know the truth, he told journalists. Adam was not about to accept the accidental death or suicide narrative. He launched his own campaign for justice, giving interviews, reaching out to members of parliament, rallying public attention. That fight continues to this day. But the family did not just face the mystery of Kirsty's death. They came up against serious failings in the Spanish police investigation that called the entire case into question. The first and most egregious, Kirsty's clothing, a key piece of evidence in any case like this, was destroyed by police the day after her death. Investigators were later forced to admit that the clothing had only been examined visually, without a microscope, without any forensic analysis whatsoever, and was simply thrown away because it was heavily soiled. That decision obliterated crucial physical evidence. The clothing could have carried traces of someone else's DNA, textile fibers from apartment 10E, handprints, signs of a struggle, everything that might have revealed what happened in those final minutes of Kirsty's life. But now, that will never be known. Second, the men from apartment 10E were not interviewed separately. They were not split up, not isolated from each other. And that is the absolute basics of any suspicious death investigation. When witnesses are questioned together, they have the chance to align their statements, adjust the details, and smooth out contradictions. That, according to the family and independent experts, is exactly what happened. Third, DNA samples from the men were not collected properly. In a case where a young woman ended up in a stranger's room and died under unexplained circumstances, this seems like an unbelievable oversight. Any British detective would tell you that DNA analysis is the first thing you do. Fourth, the security camera footage. The poolside camera captured only the last seconds of the fall, but not the actual fall from the balcony. As for the corridor camera recordings, the ones that could have shown exactly how Kirsty got to the 10th floor, who opened the door of apartment 10E for her, whether she walked in on her own or was dragged inside. According to investigators, they simply vanished, disappeared without a trace. Kirsty's father, Brian, is convinced the recordings were deliberately edited or deleted, proving it is impossible, but so is disproving it. The Maxwell family was not about to rely on Spanish justice. They hired a private detective, David Swindle, a retired Scottish police officer with 34 years of experience in the homicide division. Over the course of his career, Swindle had investigated hundreds of murders. He was the one who helped catch serial killer Peter Tobin, one of the most dangerous criminals in Scottish history. Swindle traveled to Benidorm and carried out his own reconstruction of events. His findings were alarming, and in many ways contradicted the official narrative. Swindle invited 3 women of the same height and build as Kirsty and asked them to climb over the 10th floor balcony railing, dressed the same way Kirsty had been that morning. Each of them took 12 seconds to get over the barrier. 12 seconds. That is not an impulsive moment, not a split-second lapse in judgment. That is a long time. Long enough for someone in that room to notice what was happening and stop her. If she had truly been trying to climb over the railing on her own. If even one of them had tried to hold her back. But the reconstruction also revealed something even more significant. Judging by the trajectory of the body's fall, Kirsty did not jump from the balcony. She did not push off from the railing. On the contrary, she was clinging to it, trying to hold on before she lost her grip. This is a fundamental argument against the suicide theory. A person who has decided to end their life does not grab on for dear life. A person who is being pushed out, or who is trying to escape something inside the room, clings on. A Spanish journalist who investigated the case offered another painful assessment. He stated that Kirsty's death was treated carelessly precisely because she was a foreigner, a British tourist. In his words, cases involving foreigners in Spain are often investigated in a cursory and superficial manner. For the local police, it was just another accident involving a drunk tourist who fell from a balcony. Spain is all too familiar with stories like that. But the family knew. Kirsty was not just another case. In July 2020, a Spanish court delivered a ruling that was a devastating blow to the family. All 5 men were officially cleared of any involvement in Kirsty's death. The judges ruled that there was no strong evidence of a crime and nothing to indicate that Kirsty had not jumped on her own. The wording was telling, not "it has been proven that she jumped," but "there is no evidence that she did not jump." The difference is enormous. An absence of evidence is not the same as innocence, especially when the key evidence was destroyed by the police themselves. The case attracted enormous media attention. In 2018, BBC Scotland released a documentary called Killed Abroad, entirely devoted to Kirsty's case. Detective Swindle took part in the filming and presented his findings. In 2021, an episode of True Life Crime UK aired on MTV. Each time, the story gained fresh momentum, with thousands of people posting on social media demanding justice. But for the Maxwell family, this was not the end of the fight, rather, a new chapter in it. Adam Maxwell, Brian and Denise Adamson continue to pursue the truth with the same unwavering determination as on day one. The family established the Kirsty Maxwell Charitable Foundation, which supports the families of other British citizens who have died abroad under suspicious circumstances. The foundation is both a memorial to Kirsty and practical help for those who find themselves in the same situation, facing the bureaucracy and indifference of a foreign country. The family continues to appeal to anyone who might have seen something that morning at the Pema Hotel. In particular, they are searching for an English-speaking couple who were believed to have been at the hotel on the 29th of April and may have witnessed the events. Any detail, any memory could become the missing piece of the puzzle that finally sheds light on what happened. The Kirsty Maxwell case officially remains open. Spanish authorities have never closed the investigation, despite clearing the 5 men of suspicion. But with each passing year, the chances of solving it grow slimmer. The clothing was destroyed. The camera footage vanished. The statements were never cross-checked. Time is working against justice. According to press reports, in 2025, a new television investigation into Kirsty's case was being prepared. The producers hoped that one of the 5 would finally agree to give testimony on camera. Many years have passed, and perhaps one of them is ready to talk. But so far, silence. One central question remains, haunting everyone who learns about this case. How did a 27-year-old woman, peacefully asleep in her room on the 9th floor, end up just minutes later in a stranger's apartment on the 10th, at the other end of the corridor, surrounded by 5 men she had never met? What happened behind the door of apartment 10E between 7 and 10 to 8 that morning? And why has not a single one of those 5 men, in all the years that have passed, ever told the truth about what happened before Kirsty Maxwell fell from the 10th floor balcony in Benidorm? A 15-year-old girl vanishes from a locked bungalow in the middle of the Malaysian jungle. A window is flung wide open. No signs of a struggle, no scream, not a single witness. For 9 days, more than 1,000 people comb through impassable tropical forest, and they find a body in a ravine just 2.5 kilometers from where she had been sleeping. How did a child with a severe disability end up deep in the undergrowth? Was she taken, or did she leave on her own? This is the case of Nora Quoirin, and it still haunts investigators and her family to this day. To understand what happened in August of 2019 in the state of Negeri Sembilan, you first have to understand who Nora was. Nora Ann Quoirin was born in London on the 4th of August, 2004, to an Irish father, Sebastian Quoirin, and a French mother, Mayab Quoirin. Nora had a younger brother and sister. The family lived in London, but had close ties to both Ireland and France. Nora held citizenship in both countries. From the very beginning, Nora's life was different. She was diagnosed with holoprosencephaly, a rare congenital brain malformation in which the forebrain fails to properly divide into two hemispheres. Nora had a relatively mild form of the condition, but its effects were serious. She struggled significantly with motor coordination and balance. Walking on uneven ground was a real challenge for her. She had cognitive impairments, and her intellectual development did not match her age. Nora was shy and withdrawn. She did not speak to strangers. Her parents described her as a child who had never, not once in her life, left the house alone. She could not cross a street by herself. She could not find her way in unfamiliar places. She depended on her parents for absolutely everything. At the same time, Nora was an affectionate, loving child. She adored her family, loved music, loved swimming. Her parents did everything they could to give her a full life despite her limitations. They took her on trips and showed her the world. And it was for her, for all three of their children, that the Quoirin family planned a trip to Malaysia in August of 2019. They chose the Dusun, a small eco-resort in the state of Negeri Sembilan, roughly 65 kilometers south of Kuala Lumpur. The Dusun is not a typical hotel. It consists of several standalone bungalows scattered along a hillside at the foot of Mount Barambun, right on the edge of genuine tropical rainforest. The resort marketed itself as a place for those who want to be alone with nature. Fruit orchards, hiking trails, waterfalls, birdsong, and deafening silence. The nearest settlement is Pantai Village, a small community among the palms. All around lies the dense, pristine jungle of Negeri Sembilan, one of the oldest tropical forests on the planet. The Quoirin family arrived at the Dusun on the 3rd of August, 2019. They were given a bungalow called Heliod, a wooden house on stilts with an open terrace, a living room, a kitchen, and bedrooms. All around them was greenery, humid air, and the sounds of the forest. Sebastian and Mayab spent the first evening with the children settling in, unpacking, getting used to the new surroundings. Nora, as always, stayed close to her parents. She was quiet and calm, nothing unusual, nothing alarming. On the 4th of August, Nora's 15th birthday, the family spent the day on the resort grounds. They swam, took walks, and celebrated her birthday. In the evening, everyone went to bed. Nora slept in a room with her younger brother and sister on the ground floor of the bungalow. The parents were upstairs, doors locked, windows shut. An ordinary evening in the tropics. And on the morning of the 5th of August, the Quoirin family's world collapsed. Around 8 in the morning, Mayab came downstairs and discovered that Nora was gone. Her bed was empty. Nora was not in the bathroom, not in the kitchen, not on the terrace. She was nowhere in the bungalow. The younger children were asleep and had heard nothing. Sebastian and Mayab frantically searched the entire house and the area around it, with no result. And then they noticed something. A window in the ground floor living room, not in the children's bedroom, but in the adjacent space, was open, not broken, not forced, just wide open. It was a window without bars, large enough for a person to climb through. It faced the forest. The parents immediately alerted the resort owners, but time passed as they searched the grounds themselves, running along trails, calling Nora's name. Only after that did they call the police. It was around 10 in the morning when police from the state of Negeri Sembilan arrived on scene. From that moment, one of the largest search operations in Malaysian history began. Police classified the case as a missing person. Nora's parents insisted from the very start on a different classification. They were convinced their daughter had been abducted. Sebastian and Mayab repeated it again and again, to journalists, to police, to anyone who would listen. Nora was physically incapable of leaving the house on her own. She did not even go out of their London apartment alone. She could not open a window, climb through it, get down from the terrace, and walk off into the jungle at night. It was impossible. Someone took her. The police listened but held to their own view. No signs of forced entry were found. Locks were not broken, doors were not damaged. The window could have been opened from the inside. The latch was simple, with no lock. No fingerprints from outsiders were found. Tracker dogs brought to the bungalow picked up Nora's scent, and the trail led from the window toward the forest, not toward the road, not toward the parking area, into the forest. But the parents did not give up. They reached out to the Irish and French governments. The Lucy Blackman Trust, a British organization that helps families of people who go missing abroad, joined the effort. The family offered a reward of 50,000 ringgit, roughly $12,000, for any information about Nora's whereabouts. The amount was later increased. Meanwhile, the search was ramping up at an impressive pace. More than 1,000 people were involved in the operation. Police officers, military personnel, rescue workers, and volunteers from local communities. Malaysian Army Special Forces were deployed. Commandos from the VAT-69 unit trained for jungle operations. Helicopters circled above the green canopy. Drones equipped with thermal imaging cameras scanned the area. Specially trained tracker dogs were brought in. Additional search teams arrived from neighboring states. But the real heroes of the search were the Orang Asli, the indigenous people of the Malaysian jungle, people who know this forest like their own home. They can read tracks in wet soil, spot broken branches, and find paths where an ordinary person sees nothing but an impenetrable wall of green. The Orang Asli joined the search voluntarily, and their help proved invaluable. The search area was constantly expanded. First, the immediate surroundings of the resort, then the slopes of Mount Berembun, then the valleys of rivers and streams flowing down the mountain, then abandoned roads, trails, and old logging tracks. Ultimately, the search covered an enormous area around Mount Berembun. Days passed. The 5th of August, the 6th, the 7th, the 8th. No trace. Not a scrap of clothing, not a footprint, not a broken branch that could be confidently linked to Nora. The jungle was silent. A tropical forest is not a park. It is a living organism that swallows everything: humidity, heat, insects, rain. Any trace disappears within hours. Visibility in the undergrowth is just a few meters. Progress is slow and agonizing. Every step is through roots, vines, and thorny thickets. The search teams themselves risked getting lost. On the 6th day, the chief of police for Negeri Sembilan, Muhammad Mat Yusop, told the press that the police were not ruling out any theory, including abduction, but the most likely scenario remained that Nora had left the bungalow on her own and gotten lost in the forest. He added that police had interviewed more than 100 people, including resort staff and local residents. No one had seen or heard anything suspicious on the night of her disappearance. The parents gave an emotional press conference. Nora Quoirin, holding back tears, addressed the cameras. "Nora is our first daughter. She is extremely vulnerable. She has special needs. She cannot survive alone. Please help us find her. If someone has taken her, please give us back our girl." Sebastian stood beside her, pale and devastated. The world was watching. The story swept through international media. Headlines appeared in the United Kingdom, Ireland, France, and across Southeast Asia. On the 9th of August, police played a recording of Nora's mother's voice through loudspeakers in the jungle. Mayab spoke in French, the language in which Nora felt most comfortable. "Nora, it's Mummy. We are here. We are looking for you. Come toward my voice." The sound carried above the treetops, bounced off rocks, and faded into the green silence. There was no answer. The 10th day. The 11th. Hope was fading. Survival experts said that a person without water in a tropical climate can last 3 to 4 days. With access to stream water, longer, but without food, under stress, and with Nora's physical limitations, every passing day lowered the chances of rescue. On the 13th of August, the 9th day of the search, a group of volunteers found a body. It was in a ravine on the bank of a small stream, a tributary of a river flowing down from Mount Berembun. The location was roughly 2.5 kilometers from the Dusun resort, as the crow flies. Through the terrain and jungle, the actual distance could have been significantly longer. The ground was steep, rocky, and covered in dense vegetation. The ravine was deep and hard to access. Not a place that is easy to reach even for a healthy, prepared adult. Nora's body had almost no clothing on it. It lay at the edge of the stream. The initial examination revealed no visible injuries suggesting violence. There were no signs of a struggle or restraint. The news of the discovery hit like a hammer. The family was crushed. The world mourned. But there were only more questions now. An autopsy was conducted at the Tuanku Jaafar Hospital mortuary in Seremban, the capital of Negeri Sembilan. Forensic experts determined the cause of death: gastrointestinal bleeding caused by prolonged starvation and stress. In simpler terms, Nora died of exhaustion and stress in the jungle. What is especially important is that the autopsy found no signs of violent acts by any third party. There were no toxicological anomalies, no drugs, sedatives, or any foreign substances were found in her system. There were minor injuries on the body that, according to the experts, were consistent with moving through dense undergrowth. Police confirmed their theory. Nora left the bungalow on her own, got lost in the forest, and died of starvation and stress. The case was classified as an accident. No suspects, no arrests. The Quoirin family rejected these findings. They stated that the autopsy results proved nothing. Even if starvation was the immediate cause of death, it did not explain how Nora ended up in the jungle. They continued to insist she had been kidnapped and abandoned, or that she had escaped from her captors. The family demanded a second independent autopsy. Nora's body was repatriated to France, where French forensic experts carried out their own examination. The results of the second autopsy were not fully disclosed to the public. The family stated only that the French experts had found certain inconsistencies with the Malaysian findings, but did not specify what those were. This ambiguity only fueled the public debate. In January of 2021, a year and a half after Nora's death, an inquest began. A judicial proceeding aimed at establishing the circumstances and cause of death. Hearings took place at the Seremban court. Dozens of witnesses were called. Police officers, forensic experts, resort owners, search and rescue personnel, and Orang Asli trackers. The testimony painted a complex and contradictory picture. The police stood by their version. An investigator presented forensic analysis of the window. Nora's fingerprints were found on it. There were no fingerprints from outsiders. The window latch was functional, but could easily be opened from the inside. Even a child could manage it. The dogs had picked up a trail from the window into the forest. DNA, analysis of samples collected along the route from the bungalow to where the body was found, confirmed that Nora had moved through the forest. A jungle survival expert testified that even a person with limited physical abilities could cover 2.5 kilometers in 10 days. That is just 250 meters a day, even crawling. The terrain from the resort was predominantly downhill toward the stream. Gravity helped. At night in the tropics, there is no frost. Temperatures did not drop below 22 degrees. Water in the streams was accessible. A person could survive several days, gradually growing weaker. But the family's lawyers presented counter-arguments. They called their own experts who pointed to a number of troubling circumstances. First, the area where the body was found had already been searched by rescue teams earlier, and no body was discovered. This could mean the body appeared there later, that someone had brought it. Second, the body had almost no clothing on it, yet Nora had gone to bed in pajamas. The pajamas were never found. Third, despite 10 days in the jungle, the body was in relatively good condition. This seemed atypical for a tropical forest, where decomposition happens rapidly. The lawyers also raised questions about the window. The bungalow window opened with a latch, but the latch was stiff. Some adults had difficulty opening it. Could Nora, with her coordination and fine motor skill problems, have managed that latch in the dark? Moreover, why would she have climbed through a window at all? The door was right there. If a person wants to leave a house, they go to the door, not the window. The open window looked more like a point of entry from outside than a point of exit from inside. There were other oddities too. Local residents reported hearing screams in the jungle during the first days after the disappearance. Police looked into these reports, but could not identify the source of the sounds. There were no security cameras at the resort. The owners felt they would disrupt the atmosphere of communion with nature. The gate at the resort entrance did not record license plates. In effect, there was no monitoring of who came and went from the property. The coroner heard all sides. In November of 2021, the verdict was delivered: open. The court could not conclusively determine whether the circumstances of Nora's death were the result of an accident or a crime. The coroner noted that there was insufficient evidence to establish any specific version and left the case open. This was not a vindication of the abduction theory. It was not a confirmation of the accident theory. It was an acknowledgement that the truth about the disappearance and death of Nora Quoirin remains beyond what the investigation was able to establish. The Quoirin family appealed the open verdict. They wanted the court to deliver a verdict of unlawful killing, meaning homicide. The appeal was heard by the High Court of Malaysia. In August of 2022, exactly 3 years after Nora's death, the appeal was dismissed. The court ruled that the coroner had acted within the law and the available evidence. Let us look at the theories that were considered throughout the investigation. Theory 1, Nora left on her own. This is the official position of the Malaysian police, supported by forensic evidence presented at the inquest. According to this theory, Nora woke up during the night, possibly disoriented and frightened by the unfamiliar surroundings. She opened the window and climbed out. In the darkness, she headed toward the forest, got lost, and over the following days gradually weakened from hunger, dehydration, and stress until she died in the ravine by the stream. Critics of this theory point out that Nora had serious coordination problems. Walking on a flat surface was difficult for her, and the jungle is a chaos of roots, rocks, slopes, and mud. At night, in the total darkness of a tropical forest, barefoot, in pajamas, how could she have moved at all? Why did she not scream, cry, or call for her parents? Supporters of this theory respond that the behavior of people with cognitive impairments is not always predictable. Nora may have gotten up in a drowsy state, in the kind of confusion typical of waking up in an unfamiliar place. She may simply have lost her bearings. And in the jungle, even a few steps away from the bungalow in darkness can lead to a complete loss of orientation. Theory 2. Abduction. This is the family's theory. According to it, someone entered the bungalow through the window, took Nora, and carried her away. The motive is unknown. The kidnappers may have held her for some time and then abandoned her in the jungle when the search became too large-scale, or the body was placed there later, which would explain why search teams did not find it sooner. Against this theory is the same lack of physical evidence that was discussed at the inquest. The motive for an abduction is unclear. The family was not wealthy, and no one demanded a ransom. The resort was in a remote area, making a random abduction in such a place extremely unlikely. Theory 3. A middle ground. Nora did leave on her own, but not voluntarily. Perhaps she heard a noise, became frightened, and in a panic climbed out the window. Perhaps she was sleepwalking or disoriented. This would explain why she left even though she had never done so before. The tropical heat, the jet lag, the unfamiliar environment, all of these could have triggered unusual behavior. There are also questions that do not fit neatly into any theory. If Nora left on her own, why were her pajamas never found? Clothing does not simply vanish. If she removed it gradually as she pushed through the undergrowth, fragments should have been left on branches and bushes, but nothing was found. If the body had been in the ravine for 10 days, why was it better preserved than expected? A tropical forest is a harsh environment. Insects, humidity, and heat accelerate decomposition. Experts explain this by saying the body was in stream water, which could have partially slowed the process, but the family found this explanation unconvincing. Why had the area where the body was found not yielded it earlier? Search teams said they had combed that territory. Police responded that the area had been searched but not completely. The ravine was deep, overgrown, and hard to access. In dense undergrowth, you can pass within a few meters of a body and not see it. That is true. In tropical undergrowth, visibility is literally limited to a couple of meters. But the family saw this as confirmation of their theory. The body was not there because it had been brought later. A separate mystery is the open window. The window latch raised questions. Forensic analysts could not conclusively determine whether the window had been opened from the inside or from the outside. The mechanism allowed for both. If it was opened from the outside, it means someone came. If from the inside, it means Nora managed the latch herself. But that contradicted the parents' claims about her limited physical abilities. The Dawson resort itself also came under intense scrutiny. It emerged that guest security was minimal. No surveillance cameras, no guards. The bungalows sit in isolation, surrounded by forest. The windows had no bars or reliable locks. For a tourist seeking seclusion, that is a selling point. For a family with a vulnerable child, it is a potential danger. The resort owners expressed their condolences and cooperated with the investigation, but they faced criticism for inadequate security measures. Nora's death raised questions about safety standards at resorts and about responsibility toward tourists with special needs. Malaysian authorities came under pressure, accused of being unwilling to consider the abduction theory. The police rejected these accusations. They pointed out that the search operation was unprecedented in scale, that all available resources had been deployed, and that the investigation had been conducted in good faith. They emphasized that the absence of evidence of a crime was not an oversight by investigators, but an objective reality. Sometimes the simplest explanation turns out to be the right one. But for the Quoirin family, the simple explanation was unacceptable. Everything they were being asked to believe contradicted what they had known about their daughter for 15 years. In 2022, after their appeal was dismissed, the Quoirin family continued to fight for justice. They reached out to human rights organizations, kept giving interviews, and refused to let the world forget about Nora. In one interview, Mayab Quoirin said, "We are not seeking revenge. We are seeking the truth. We want to know what happened to our daughter. Every family deserves that." The case of Nora became a symbol of vulnerability and of questions that may never be answered. Nora Quoirin was buried in Belfast, Northern Ireland, in a small cemetery in the shade of old trees. A quiet girl who loved music and her family found peace far from the Malaysian jungle where she spent the last days of her life. But there is no peace for those who remain. Sebastian and Mayab go on, living with questions that have no answers. Every night, the same thoughts. What happened that night? Who opened the window? How did their girl end up in that ravine? Was she alone? Was she alone the whole time? The case of Nora Quoirin remains open. Officially, it is an accident. For the family, it is an unsolved crime. For everyone else, it is a mystery that the jungles of Malaysia may keep to themselves forever. Nora Quoirin, 15 years old. Birthday, the 4th of August. On her last birthday, she was alive, surrounded by family in a faraway country, on the edge of an ancient forest. And then the forest took her. Or someone took her for the forest. We do not know, and we may never know. Ever. A private island in Fiji, 14 villas, total isolation from the world. A young couple from Memphis flies in for their honeymoon to start a new life together. 2 days later, the wife is lying dead on the bathroom floor, and the husband is paddling a kayak into the open ocean, carrying his passport and leaving his GPS watch behind. He'll say it was an accident, that she fell down drunk, that he just wanted to give her space. But the injuries on her body will tell a very different story, a story about what happens when paradise becomes a trap, and the person who swore to love you turns out to be a predator. In the heart of the Yasawa archipelago, amid the turquoise waters of the South Pacific, hides an island most people have never heard of, Turtle Island, a private resort in Fiji, reachable only by seaplane, 30 minutes flying over a scattering of islands, or by boat, 2 hours across open ocean, 500 acres of tropical forest, 12 private beaches, and just 14 villas. A maximum of 14 couples at any one time on the entire island. The cost, starting at $1,500 per night, per person. This isn't just an expensive hotel. This is a place for people who want complete isolation from the world. There's no city noise, no tourist crowds, no cars, just the ocean, palm trees, and silence. In 1980, the movie The Blue Lagoon with Brooke Shields was filmed on this island, a romantic story about two young people stranded alone on a deserted island. Since then, Turtle Island has become a symbol of romantic seclusion. Condé Nast Traveler named it the best resort in Fiji. People come here to celebrate anniversaries. People fly here for honeymoons. Couples dream about this place for years, saving up, planning, because Turtle Island promises the perfect escape from reality. But this isolation has a flip side. There's no police, no hospital, no security cameras. The nearest town is hours away by water. If something happens on this island, help won't come quickly. In early July of 2022, a young American couple from Memphis, Tennessee, arrives at Turtle Island. They've just gotten married. They're happy. They've come here to begin their life together. 2 days later, one of them will be dead, and the other will be paddling a kayak into the open ocean, away from what he's done. Christi Chen is born into a family of Chinese immigrants in the United States. She's an only child. Her mother, Xiaowei Liu, and her father pour everything they have into their daughter. Education, discipline, hard work, 3 pillars on which Christi's life is built. She grows up driven and ambitious. Christi's first career is far from medicine. She becomes a pastry chef. She works in bakeries, creates cakes and desserts, hones her craft. But at some point, she realizes she needs more stability, more prospects, more opportunities to help people. Christi makes a decision that changes everything. she enrolls in the University of Tennessee, Health Science Center's pharmacy program. This isn't just a career change, it's a complete overhaul of her life. Years of study, exams, sleepless nights. But Christi pulls through. She earns her pharmacy degree and wins the prestigious Wolters Kluwer Award for outstanding achievement in clinical communication. Her research focuses on social determinants of health in underserved communities. Christi isn't just studying, she wants to make the world a better place. After graduation, Christi lands a job as a pharmacist at a Kroger pharmacy in Memphis. 3.5 years of steady work. Colleagues know her as a responsible and attentive professional. She helps patients understand their prescriptions, explains side effects, monitors drug interactions. By 36, Christi has achieved everything she dreamed of professionally, but something is missing in her personal life. She wants a family. She wants love. She wants someone to share everything she's built. In November of 2021, she meets a man who, she believes, is the one. His name is Bradley Dawson. Their romance ignites instantly. Christi is certain she's finally found her other half. She doesn't know she's found her death. Bradley Robert Dawson lives in Memphis, Tennessee. He's 38 years old. He works as an IT specialist at Youth Villages, a non-profit organization that helps at-risk teenagers and families in crisis. On paper, Dawson looks impeccable. A stable job in the social sector, a decent salary, no trouble with the law. In the Shelby County police databases, which cover Memphis, there isn't a single arrest under his name. Not one detention, not one incident, a clean record. But records can be deceiving. Dawson has been married before. His first marriage ended in divorce. The details of that marriage remain in the shadows. Neither his ex-wife nor Dawson himself talk about the reasons for the split. But one fact will become critically important later. During his first marriage, Dawson took his wife on vacation to Turtle Island, the very same place he would bring Christi Chen. Long before that first marriage, in 2005, Dawson was in a relationship with Kristen Baker. They met as students at the University of Tennessee. Baker remembers the beginning of the romance this way. "We fell madly in love with each other. It was intense and fast. Intense and fast." Words she would repeat, but not with admiration, with a warning. According to Baker, over time Dawson began showing jealousy and a need for control. He wanted to know where she was, who she was talking to, why she was late. Baker sums up his behavior in one phrase. He was verbally manipulative, threatening, and jealous. And one day, he crossed the line. He physically pushed her. Baker leaves, but Dawson doesn't change. He simply finds new partners, gets married, gets divorced, and keeps searching. In 2021, he meets Christi Chen. She sees a respectable man with a good job and a clean past. She doesn't know about Kristen Baker, doesn't know about the jealousy, doesn't know about the push, and nobody tells her. November 2021. Bradley Dawson and Christi Chen start dating. Everything moves fast, so fast that the people around them don't have time to ask questions. They spend every free evening together. Romantic dinners, long conversations, plans for the future. Christi, who waited so many years for real love, throws herself into the relationship completely. Bradley is charming. He says the right words, makes the right gestures, knows how to impress. 3 months pass. In February 2022, Bradley proposes to Christi. She says yes. The wedding is organized by Bella Baxter Special Events, with owner Catherine Benson personally overseeing the ceremony. The wedding is beautiful, but too fast. A few months of dating, a whirlwind proposal, and suddenly they're husband and wife. Christi's friends and colleagues congratulate her. She's glowing. She's found everything she ever dreamed of. Love, a family, a future. The couple settles in together in Memphis. Christi keeps working as a pharmacist at Kroger. Bradley goes to work at Youth Villages. From the outside, a perfect young couple. But Christi doesn't ask the questions she should have asked. Why did Bradley's previous marriage fall apart? How did he treat his former partners? Were there conflicts? These questions hang in the air. And then, it's time to plan the honeymoon. Christi dreams of something incredible, exotic, secluded, true paradise. Bradley suggests Turtle Island in Fiji. He knows the place. He's been there before. But he doesn't tell Christi that. For her, it's a discovery. A magical island she reads about on the resort's website. 12 beaches, 14 villas, complete privacy. The trip costs tens of thousands of dollars. But this is the honeymoon of a lifetime. Christi is ready for anything. She books the flights and the villa. She buys new swimsuits and dresses. She counts down the days. She doesn't know she's counting down the days to the end of her life. July 6th, 2022. Bradley Dawson and Christi Chen Dawson arrive in Fiji. Nadi International Airport greets them with humid tropical heat and the smell of the ocean. Ahead, the final leg of the journey. A seaplane lifts off from the coast and heads northwest toward the Yasawa archipelago. 30 minutes flying over turquoise water dotted with tiny islands. Below, coral reefs drift past, white strips of beach, the dark green of tropical forest. The seaplane touches down off the shore of Turtle Island. The staff welcomes the couple as special guests. They're shown around the grounds, led to their villa, a spacious wooden bungalow with an ocean view. All around, silence broken only by the sound of surf and the calls of tropical birds. The first day goes exactly the way Christi dreamed. Beach, crystal clear water, tropical cocktails at sunset. The resort staff, smiling Fijians who know every guest by name. They notice. The young couple looks happy. They take photos, laugh, hold hands. Everything like a resort brochure. But Christi doesn't think about the fact that the isolation she found so romantic could become a trap. She's thinking about how beautiful the sunset is. In 36 hours, she'll be dead on the floor of her villa's bathroom. July 8th, the second full day on the island. The evening begins at the resort's floating bar, a wooden platform over the water where guests can sip cocktails while watching the sunset over the Pacific. Bradley and Christi join other couples. They drink, a lot. Alcohol is included in the resort's price. Nobody counts glasses here. The mood starts out good. The couple dances with hotel staff who entertain guests with traditional Fijian dances. Christi laughs. Bradley smiles. Everything looks normal, and then something shifts. The staff notices. Christi becomes upset. Her mood drops sharply as if someone flipped a switch. The smile vanishes. She looks away. During dinner, an argument erupts between the couple. The details of this argument will emerge later, at trial. Christi learns the truth that Bradley had been hiding. He's been to Turtle Island before. He brought his ex-wife here. This place that Christi thought was their special discovery, their first shared adventure, a symbol of a new beginning, turns out to be a repeat. For Christi, this is a betrayal, not just a lie, but the choice to bring her to the same place he'd already been with another woman, as if their honeymoon were a copy of someone else's. The argument escalates. The couple tries to keep up appearances in the restaurant, but the tension is obvious. After dinner, they return to the villa, both heavily intoxicated. The villa door closes behind them. Night falls on the island. Tropical silence wraps around the bungalow. The staff goes about their business. Other guests retire to their villas. Nobody knows what's happening behind those closed doors. Nobody knows that behind those walls, a tragedy has already begun. Nobody knows that this dinner is the last dinner of Christi Chen's life. A tropical night that was supposed to be romantic turns into a nightmare with no waking up. Behind the closed doors of the villa, the argument continues and intensifies. Alcohol, hurt, and jealousy turn a marital conflict into something far more dangerous. What happens next is known only from the words of one person, Bradley Dawson. The other witness is dead. According to Dawson's version, after returning to the villa, he tries to make up. He lies down next to Christi, reaches out to hold her, but she pushes him away, says he's hurt her, says she's not sure she even wants to be with him. For a man who, according to his ex-girlfriend, was always jealous and controlling, these words are a blow. The argument moves from the bedroom to the bathroom. Dawson will later tell police, "Christi pushed me, and I lost control." Words behind which someone's death stands. Lost control. Staff in nearby buildings hear sounds from the newlyweds' villa. Loud sounds of an argument. Something breaking and falling. Then, a scream. And after that, complete silence. Silence that lasts all night. Nobody comes to check. Turtle Island has no night security. No front desk attendant on duty. The staff lives in a separate part of the island. Sounds of an argument from a villa. Unpleasant, but not grounds for intervention. Couples argue. It happens. especially with a lot of alcohol involved. They'll probably make up by morning, but there will be no morning for Christi. What exactly happens in the villa's bathroom that night? Only Bradley Dawson knows. The medical examination will determine multiple head and facial injuries inflicted by a blunt object, defensive wounds on the hands, signs of an attempt to fight back, an injury on the back, shattered glass everywhere. This is not a drunk person falling. This is a deliberate attack. When it's over, Bradley Dawson stands in a bathroom drenched in blood. Christi lies on the bathroom floor, motionless, shattered glass all around. In this moment, Dawson makes a decision that reveals more about him than any words ever could. He doesn't call for help, doesn't run to the staff, doesn't try to save his wife. Instead, he starts packing, methodically, deliberately. He takes his passport, his wallet, his personal documents, everything needed for international travel, and he intentionally leaves behind two things: his cell phone and his GPS watch, two devices that could be used to track him. This is not the behavior of a man in panic. This is calculation. In the middle of the night, Dawson leaves the villa and walks down to the shore. The resort has kayaks for guests, single-person boats for paddling along the coast. Dawson gets into a kayak and starts rowing, not along the shore, into the open ocean, his destination, a neighboring island several kilometers across dark water. Night, the Pacific Ocean. One man in a small boat. Above him, stars he and Christi were supposed to gaze at together. Beneath the boat, a depth best not thought about. Dawson rows, and in the villa, in the bathroom, Christi Chen lies alone on the floor. Whether she's alive or already dead, Dawson claims he doesn't know. He insists she was alive when he left, that he just wanted to give her space. But people who want to give space don't take their passport with them, don't leave their GPS watch behind, don't paddle into the ocean in the middle of the night. People who want to give space call a doctor. Dawson doesn't call a doctor. He rows. July 9th, 2022. Morning on Turtle Island begins as usual. The staff sets out breakfast. Other guests come to the table. But the Dawson's villa is silent. The newlyweds don't appear. The staff isn't concerned. At resorts of this caliber, young couples often skip breakfast. A honeymoon is a time when mornings start late. Hours pass. Lunch comes and goes. Still no sign of the couple. Not on the beach, not by the pool, not in the restaurant. Now it's unusual. Skipping breakfast? Normal. Skipping both breakfast and lunch? Strange. In the afternoon, a resort employee named Tomasi Maui decides to check the villa. He approaches the door, knocks. Silence. He opens the door and steps inside. What he sees will stay with him forever. In the bathroom, signs of violence. On the floor lies Christi Chen Dawson. She's not moving. Shattered glass surrounds her. The nature of the injuries leaves no doubt. This was no fall. This was an attack. Maui alerts the resort management. Management contacts the authorities. But the police are far away. The nearest station is on the main island, hours of travel. While they wait, another fact becomes clear. The husband is not in the villa. Bradley Dawson is nowhere on the island. Some of his belongings are missing. A kayak is gone. Christi Chen Dawson, a 36-year-old pharmacist from Memphis, the only daughter of Chinese immigrants, is dead. She spent 2 days on the island of her dreams. She dreamed of a happy beginning to a new life, of children, of a future, of years together with the man she loved. Instead, she got the end. Her body lies in the bathroom of a villa she paid thousands of dollars for. Fiji police launch a search for Bradley Dawson. The facts paint a grim picture. Wife dead in the villa, husband vanished, kayak missing. The search extends to the neighboring islands of the Asawa Archipelago, a chain of volcanic islands scattered across the ocean. Most of them are uninhabited or home to small villages where everyone knows each other. A stranger stands out immediately. Hours pass, a day and a half, and finally, 36 hours after Christie's body is discovered on one of the small islands in the archipelago, a local man named Manoa Ratulele spots a stranger, a white man, alone, without a boat. The kayak apparently washed ashore earlier. Ratulele approaches and sees the man is beaten up. His palms and feet are bleeding, his body covered in bruises and scrapes. He looks lost, disoriented. Ratulele offers the stranger food and water. At first, the man refuses. He sits in silence, staring at the ocean. Time passes, and the man finally speaks. "Please, I need to call the police." Ratulele contacts the authorities. Police arrive on the island and detain Dawson. On his person, they find a passport and a wallet. Everything he took from the villa. No cell phone, no GPS watch. He left them behind on purpose. Dawson is transported to the city of Lautoka on the western coast of the main island of Viti Levu. There he's placed in a cell and interrogation begins. America is far away. A lawyer, even farther, consular assistance, in progress. Bradley Dawson, an IT specialist from Memphis, finds himself in prison in one of the most remote countries on Earth. Not quite how he pictured the end of his honeymoon. Instead of a seaplane back to Nadi, he's taken by police boat. Instead of business class to Memphis, a cramped cell in a tropical prison awaits. The dream of escape shatters against the reality of island justice. At the Lautoka police station, Bradley Dawson starts talking. He describes the evening. They drank, they argued, the argument moved to the bathroom. According to him, Christi ended up near the toilet. She was injured. There was blood and a cut on her face. Fijian authorities will later state, during the initial interrogation, Dawson essentially confessed to what happened. He described how he lost control. But then the situation changes. Dawson is provided with a lawyer, and his position does a complete 180. He refuses to sign the confession statement, claims he was misunderstood, that the context was different. The defense constructs a new version of events. Christi was drunk. She fell in the bathroom and hit her head. It was an accident. Tragic, but an accident. Dawson adds, "She was alive when I left." He claims he got into the kayak to de-escalate the situation and give her space. A kayak in the middle of the night in the open ocean, for de-escalation. That only sounds convincing to the person saying it, but the evidence tells a different story. A passport and wallet in the kayak. What do you need those for? To de-escalate. GPS watch and phone deliberately left in the villa. Why hide them if you've done nothing wrong? The nature of Christi's injuries, as determined by the medical examination. Multiple wounds inflicted by a blunt object. These are not injuries from a bathroom fall. A person who falls down drunk sustains one injury, maybe two, but not multiple wounds from different angles, not defensive marks on the hands. The accident theory crumbles against medical facts like a kayak against a reef. But Dawson continues to insist on his innocence from his prison cell. While Dawson sits in his Lautoka cell, Christi Chen Dawson's body lies in a morgue in Fiji. And here, the family faces yet another ordeal. Christi's injuries are so severe that preparing her body for transport to the United States is impossible. The damage is too extensive. The body cannot be flown across the Pacific. Christi's parents fly to Fiji. Xiaowei Liu, her mother, and Christi's father travel thousands of miles to see their daughter one last time. They enter the morgue, and the mother becomes inconsolable. Christi's face is so damaged that her own mother can barely recognize her. Christi's father is tormented by a different question. Dawson claims Christi was alive when he got into the kayak. Her body wasn't discovered until the next day, many hours later. Was Christi still alive when he paddled away? Could she have been saved if someone had come sooner? These questions will remain unanswered. The family makes an agonizing decision. Christi will be cremated here, in Fiji, not in a crematorium, on an open wooden funeral pyre, following local tradition. The only child of the Chen family, the girl they invested everything in, raised with such love, who became a pharmacist, found love, and flew toward her dream, returns home as ashes. The family asks one single question that nobody can answer, not even Dawson himself. Why? Why did he do this? Bradley Dawson is held in a Fijian prison. For an American used to life in Memphis, the conditions are a shock. This isn't a federal prison with air conditioning. This is an island nation with limited resources. Dawson awaits trial, and the wait stretches into years. From behind bars, he gives an interview to ABC News, and his words are staggering. He calls Christi my everything, says, "I pray every day," claims, "We never had physical arguments in our relationship, not one, ever." A man whose wife was found with multiple blunt force trauma injuries to the head claims there was no physical conflict between them. His lawyer tries to secure release on bail. The court denies it. During the bail hearing, a detail surfaces that speaks volumes about Dawson's circle. One of the people he enlisted as a character witness turns out to be a convicted sex offender. The court dismisses that reference. Dawson spends more than 2 years in a Fijian prison before his trial begins. During that time, his case attracts media attention. And it's during this period that his ex-girlfriend Kristen Baker decides to speak up. In an exclusive interview, Baker tells the story of her relationship with Dawson in 2005, about the whirlwind start of the romance, about the jealousy, about the control, about the time he pushed her, about his manipulativeness. The portrait Baker paints matches what happened in the villa on Turtle Island, a whirlwind romance, then control, then aggression, the same pattern repeating 17 years later. Only this time, it doesn't end with a push. It ends with a death. 17 years between 2 relationships. But the behavior never changed. Only the consequences did. What started as intense and fast ended in tragedy in a bathroom on the other side of the world. December 2024. The High Court of Lautoka on Fiji's western coast. Justice Riaz Hamza opens the hearing in the case of Bradley Robert Dawson, charged with taking the life of Christi Chen Dawson. The trial lasts a week. The prosecution presents the evidence methodically and systematically. Testimony from Turtle Island staff. The couple argued at dinner, blows and screams were heard from the villa, then silence. The medical examination, multiple blunt force injuries to the head and face, wounds inconsistent with a fall, defensive marks on the victim's hands. The circumstances of the flight, a kayak in the middle of the night, passport and wallet on his person, phone and GPS watch intentionally left behind, and Dawson's own initial statement in which he admitted he lost control. The defense builds its case around the accident theory. The lawyers argue Christi was extremely intoxicated and fell in the bathroom. The injuries are the result of hitting a hard surface. The kayak escape, not an admission of guilt, but the panic of a confused husband who didn't know what to do. But Justice Hamza sees through this version. The nature of the injuries, multiple blows from different angles, cannot be explained by a single fall. The marks on the victim's hands indicate she tried to defend herself, and Dawson's behavior after the attack speaks for itself. The judge notes the fact that Dawson took his passport and personal belongings but left behind tracking devices points to his intent to flee after committing the crime. This isn't panic. This is a plan. After a week of hearings, Justice Hamza delivers the verdict. Guilty. Bradley Robert Dawson is found guilty of taking the life of his wife, Christi Chen Dawson, on Turtle Island. The verdict echoes through a courtroom located thousands of miles from Memphis, where this couple began their brief story together. Justice catches up with Dawson, not in his homeland, but in the country where he brought his wife chasing a dream. February 11th, 2025. The courtroom in Lautoka. Justice Riaz Hamza prepares to hand down the sentence. Bradley Dawson stands before him, the same man who, 2.5 years ago, rowed across the ocean in a kayak, fleeing from what he'd done. The judge begins with an assessment of the convicted man's conduct. Your behavior after the incident was despicable, says Hamza. Having inflicted serious and life-threatening injuries, you fled the scene, leaving her alone and helpless. These words land in the silence of the courtroom. Dawson didn't just commit an assault. He left his injured wife without help. He took his passport and paddled away. He thought of himself, not of the woman he left behind without aid. The sentence, life imprisonment. A minimum of 18 years before any pardon application can be considered. Dawson will serve his sentence in a Fijian prison, thousands of miles from home, in a country where he planned to spend the happiest days of his life. Then Christi's mother, Xiao Wei Liu, takes the floor. She reads a victim impact statement. Her voice trembles, but her words land like hammer blows. No mother should have to know that this is how her daughter's life ended, and at the hands of the very person who swore to love, protect, and cherish her. She pauses, gathers her strength, and continues. I hope that the rest of your life will be filled with suffering, loneliness, and despair. Xiao Wei Liu's final words are addressed directly to Dawson. I hope the memories of what you did to her in her final moments will haunt you, because you are a monster. The courtroom is silent. The only sound is Christi's mother quietly weeping. Dawson is led away. The doors close behind him. Turtle Island keeps operating. Seaplanes still deliver couples to the island of dreams. The ocean is still turquoise. The beaches are still white. The resort still promises the perfect escape from reality. But, for those who know this story, the island will never be the same. The case of Christi Chen Dawson is a story of how a fast romance becomes a deadly trap. Just months from meeting to marriage, just days from the wedding to tragedy in Fiji. The warning signs were there. An ex-girlfriend knew about his jealousy and aggression back in 2005. A first marriage ended in divorce for reasons that remain unknown. The speed of the romance was itself a red flag, but Christi didn't know about these signs. Nobody told her, and nobody asked the people who knew. The isolation of Turtle Island became a trap. A place designed for romantic seclusion became a place where the victim had nowhere to run. No neighbors on the other side of the wall, no police 5 minutes away, no cameras to capture a cry for help. Just the ocean, silence, and a locked villa door. Bradley Dawson sits in a prison in Fiji. He'll sit there for at least 18 years, maybe longer. A man who worked at an organization helping teenagers in crisis became the source of the most devastating crisis in another person's life. Christi Chen, the only child of 2 immigrants who dreamed of a better life for their daughter, never came home. Her mother called her husband a monster. Some predators wear wedding rings. They say the right words, make the beautiful gestures, and take you to an island paradise. It's worth remembering, paradise can turn out to be a trap, and not everyone who swears to love you knows how. October 2021, the state of Vermont. A tiny town called Bolton, tucked away among the autumn mountains of New England. A camper van, converted from a Chevrolet Express, sits on the shoulder of a road near a ski resort. Inside is a young couple who came to celebrate their first wedding anniversary. In a few hours, one of them will be dead, and the other will spend the next 3 days sending text messages from the victim's phone, pretending to search for her, even though her body was already lying in garbage bags in the bathroom of that very camper. This is a story about how the dream of a free life on the road turned into a nightmare, about a 19-year age gap, about domestic violence that everyone could see but no one managed to stop, and about a cold-bloodedness that made investigators' blood run cold. This is the story of Emily Jean Ferlazzo. Emily Jean Schwartz was born in New Hampshire, one of the quietest and most scenic states on America's northeastern coast. From childhood, she was the kind of kid you couldn't help but notice. Her stepmother, Prudy Schwartz, later recalled, she was the girl who ran around in polka-dot pants and a striped shirt, dancing. Emily loved to sing. She had a beautiful voice and dreamed of performing on stage someday. She loved animals. Anything shiny and sparkly drew her like a magnet. Friends and family described her as a sunny, open person who genuinely cared about the people around her. By the time she was 20, Emily had chosen a path in medicine. She was working as a nursing assistant and planned to continue her education, earn a full nursing license, and help people. It was a natural extension of who she was. Emily was always drawn to those who needed help, whether human or animal. She had dreams of traveling, of seeing the world beyond Little New Hampshire. She imagined road trips along the coast, new cities, sunsets over the ocean. Emily lived with her mother, Adrienne Bass, and her stepfather in Northfield, a small town where everyone knows everyone, where life flows at a steady, predictable pace. Life was simple, but full of plans and hopes. Emily had everything a 20-year-old woman needs for a happy future: a career, dreams, a loving family. Everything changed in the summer of 2020. In July of 2020, Emily met Joseph Ferlazzo Jr. He was 41. She was 21. The age difference was 19 years. Joseph was a large man who lived in Essex Junction, Vermont. Not much was known about his past, but it concealed troubling shadows. In October of 2009, his stepmother, Yun-hee Lim Ferlazzo, was found dead with multiple stab wounds in the apartment she shared with Joseph's father in Upper Gwinnett Township, Pennsylvania. The killer was never found. When Joseph Ferlazzo Jr.'s name made the news in 2021, investigators from Pennsylvania immediately contacted Vermont police to learn the details of the new case. Was it a coincidence? Officially, no connection was ever established, but the fact alone speaks volumes. Emily and Joseph's relationship moved at lightning speed. the kind of pace that, in the psychology of domestic violence, is considered one of the biggest red flags. They moved in together in Essex Junction in July of 2020, almost immediately after meeting. Emily left her mother's home and moved in with a man she had known for mere weeks. In September of the same year, just 2 months later, Joseph proposed, and in October of 2020, they got married. From first meeting to wedding, roughly 4 months had passed. 4 months from hello to till death do us part. For Emily's friends and family, this speed was deeply alarming. A man 19 years older rushing a young woman to the altar, that is a textbook pattern of control. But Emily herself seemed to be in love and happy. Joseph, by all appearances, knew how to be charming, at least in the beginning. He painted a picture of a shared future filled with adventure and freedom. The couple had a joint project. They started converting a Chevrolet Express van into a livable camper. They gave it a name, Roaming Rosie. The idea was romantic. Travel the entire East Coast, live free, on wheels, with no ties to any one place. Van life culture was at its peak popularity at the time, and Emily threw herself into it with enthusiasm. But behind the facade of the freedom dream, a very different reality was taking shape. Emily's mother, Adrienne Bass, later told investigators and journalists that her daughter's marriage involved systematic domestic violence. Emily repeatedly showed up with scratches and bruises on her body. When family members asked where they came from, Emily would find explanations, the way millions of domestic violence victims do around the world. She fell. She bumped into something. It was an accident. Adrienne sensed that Joseph was controlling her daughter, isolating her from family and friends, shrinking her social circle. Emily called less often, visited less frequently. Her world was narrowing down to one person, Joseph. A textbook picture of abusive relationships, described in hundreds of studies. Rapid attachment, a quick proposal, marriage, isolating the victim from their support network. Gradual escalation of violence, from verbal humiliation to physical control. A few weeks before the fateful trip, Emily's mother felt something was wrong. The weekend before they left, I had a feeling, a sense, that something was off about him, Adrienne told Fox News. I didn't like their relationship and how things were going. I felt, as a mother, that my daughter was in danger. Adrienne tried to warn her daughter, but Emily, as so often happens in these situations, couldn't or wouldn't see the danger. She was 22 years old. She believed things would get better. A year after the wedding, the reality of Emily and Joseph's life was a far cry from the Instagram fantasies of van life. The couple was still living in the camper, but not at scenic oceanside stops. It was parked at the home of Emily's mother and stepfather in Northfield. Roaming Rosie never embarked on its grand East Coast journey. The dream of freedom on wheels had become the cramped confines of a van sitting in one spot. Financial struggles, domestic conflicts, mounting tension, it all accumulated day after day in the tight quarters of the camper. But a wedding anniversary is a special day, and Emily wanted to celebrate it, their first year together despite everything. They decided to drive to Vermont. Joseph's sister and her boyfriend were renting an Airbnb cabin near the Bolton Valley ski resort. It was supposed to be a short trip, a couple of days in nature, autumn mountains, time alone together. Maybe Emily hoped that a change of scenery would help, that away from everyday problems, they would become who they had been at the start, a couple in love with dreams of the future. On Friday, October 15th, 2021, Emily and Joseph Ferlazzo left Northfield in their camper, Roaming Rosie, heading for Vermont. Mid-October in New England is the peak of Indian summer, when the forests blaze with orange, red, and gold. The road wound through picturesque mountains dressed in brilliant autumn colors, past small towns with white churches and pumpkins on porches. The drive from New Hampshire to Bolton took several hours. They arrived in the evening and parked the camper on Bolton Valley Access Road, the road leading to the ski resort, not far from the cabin Joseph's sister had rented. The evening was quiet, fog wrapped around the mountains. None of the locals paid any attention to the converted van on the roadside. There were plenty of them here. Vermont had long been a haven for outdoor enthusiasts. What exactly happened that night inside the camper is known only from Joseph himself, the sole surviving witness, and his version of events changed over time, which became one of the key issues at trial. According to the initial confession Joseph gave police after his arrest, on the night of October 16th, He and Emily got into a fight. Joseph claimed Emily started hitting and kicking him. Then, according to him, she lay down on the bed. And at that moment, Joseph picked up a Glock 19 and shot his wife twice in the head. By his own admission, he caught her off guard. Emily never had a chance. But at trial, 3 years later, Joseph told an entirely different story. He claimed that Emily pulled another gun, a Taurus, from under the pillow and said to him, "You're done." Only then, in this new version, did he grab his Glock and fire in self-defense. Why didn't he mention this critically important detail in his initial confession? At trial, Joseph answered, "I don't remember talking to the police." He claimed that memories were coming back to him gradually, in flashes. The forensic pathologist, former chief medical examiner Dr. Stephen Shapiro, presented the autopsy results to the court. Emily was killed by 2 gunshots to the head. But that wasn't all. After she was already dead, 18 stab wounds were inflicted on her body. The prosecution emphasized this fact as pivotal. The prosecution argued that this pointed not to self-defense, but to uncontrollable rage. But even that wasn't the extent of it. What Joseph did in the hours that followed shocked even seasoned investigators. On the morning of October 16th, 8 to 9 hours after the killing, Joseph Ferlazzo walked out of the camper and went to have breakfast with his sister and her boyfriend. He ate calmly, made conversation, and acted completely normal. No one suspected a thing. Emily's body was lying inside the camper the entire time. After breakfast, Joseph returned to the camper. But instead of calling the police or an ambulance, he occupied himself with something else. For 3 hours, he gave himself a tattoo. 3 hours. Calmly, methodically, with a steady hand. Then he spent more time with his sister by a campfire, making friendly conversation. 12 to 15 hours after the killing, Joseph began what the judge would later call a display of chilling detachment. He dismembered his wife's body and placed the remains in garbage bags, hiding them in the camper's bathroom. Then he tried to cover his tracks. He wiped surfaces with bleach, cleaned up visible bloodstains. All of this happened inside the very camper that he and Emily had lovingly converted and named Roaming Rosie, the very place where they had planned to begin their life on the road together. Over the next 3 days, from October 16th through the 18th, Joseph staged a carefully orchestrated and monstrously cynical performance. Starting Saturday, October 16th, he sent text messages and made phone calls, creating the appearance that he was searching for his wife. He texted Emily's phone, a phone that was most likely right there in the camper. He called friends and acquaintances, asking if anyone had seen Emily. He reached out to relatives, playing the worried husband. Every message, every call was part of the act. And all the while, Emily's remains were in black garbage bags just a few feet away from him, in the bathroom of the camper, where he ate, slept, and lived for those 3 days. On Monday, October 18th, around 6 in the evening, Joseph returned home to New Hampshire, alone, without his wife. When Emily's worried family asked where she was, Joseph told them a story. Supposedly on Saturday around 1 in the afternoon, they had argued in a parking lot in Bolton. Emily got out of the camper and walked off along Route 2, a federal highway running through Vermont. When he came back to pick her up, she was gone. That was it. She just walked away and never came back. The family didn't believe it, couldn't believe it. Emily would never have walked off alone, without her belongings, without her phone, in an unfamiliar place. That same evening, October 18th, at around 7:15, Emily's relatives called the police and reported her missing. The case was classified as a suspicious disappearance. Vermont State Police launched an investigation. Investigators quickly noticed inconsistencies in Joseph's account. His story didn't hold up under even a cursory examination. A 22-year-old woman doesn't just step out of a vehicle on a rural Vermont road in October with no ID, no phone, no money, and vanish without a trace. Bolton Valley Access Road is a mountain road leading to the resort, surrounded by forest. The nearest town is miles away on foot. Where could she have gone? Someone should have seen her, but no one did. Not a single surveillance camera, not a single witness placed Emily anywhere after Friday. Vermont State Police quickly classified the case as suspicious and set up surveillance on the camper, where they suspected key evidence might be found. And then something happened that sped up the resolution. Around midnight on Tuesday, October 19th, a friend of Joseph's named Spencer Lemons was giving him a ride to the camper. As they pulled closer, Joseph spotted police cars near his vehicle. It was at that moment, realizing his plan was falling apart, that Joseph told Spencer his wife was in the camper and that she was dead. Spencer asked point blank, "Did you kill her?" Joseph answered, "Yes." Spencer immediately let Joseph out of the car and called 911. Police obtained a search warrant for the camper. What they found inside confirmed their worst fears. In the van's bathroom were 8 black garbage bags. Inside them, the remains of Emily Jean Ferlazzo. Investigators also found bloodstains, knives, a saw, and a bottle of bleach. DNA analysis on the knives and bullets later confirmed they belonged to Emily, but Joseph himself was nowhere to be found. After Spencer dropped him off, he had fled. The manhunt began. It didn't last long. Chance intervened, or more precisely, the professional alertness of one officer. A Vermont State Police detective stopped at a Maplefield store, a convenience store in the town of St. Albans, roughly an hour's drive north of Bolton, to grab lunch. Inside, he recognized Joseph Ferlazzo. The detective approached him, confirmed his identity, and asked if he was willing to come in for a conversation. Joseph didn't resist. At the police station, detectives conducted a lengthy interrogation. And Joseph Ferlazzo talked. He confessed to killing his wife. He said he shot her in the head twice after a fight. He said he dismembered the body 12 to 15 hours later. He said he placed the remains in garbage bags and hid them in the camper's bathroom. The entire account was recorded on video. One detail, however, was completely absent from this confession. Not a word about self-defense. Not a word about Emily supposedly threatening him with a gun. Not a word about the phrase, "You're done." Nothing. On October 20th, 2021, Joseph Ferlazzo was charged with second-degree murder. The charge was subsequently upgraded to first-degree murder. At his initial hearing in Chittenden County Court, Joseph pleaded not guilty. The judge denied bail. Then began the long wait for trial. The case dragged on for more than 3 years, a period that became an additional ordeal for Emily's family. 3 years of uncertainty, 3 years without justice, 3 years during which they couldn't turn the page. Joseph's defense attorneys used every opportunity to delay the proceedings. In March of 2024, the defense filed a motion to suppress Joseph's videotaped confession, arguing it had been obtained with procedural violations, that Joseph hadn't fully understood his rights, that the interrogation had been coercive. The court carefully reviewed the arguments and denied the motion. The video recording in which Joseph calmly and in detail describes how he shot and dismembered his wife remained in evidence. This ruling proved critical to the outcome of the trial. The trial began on December 6, 2024, in Chittenden County Superior Court in Burlington. The prosecutor laid out the state's case for the jury. Joseph Ferlazzo and his wife Emily had argued during their anniversary trip, after which Joseph shot his wife, inflicted 18 stab wounds on her body after death, and dismembered her. The prosecution maintained that this was premeditated murder, not self-defense, since no evidence indicated that Emily had ever attacked her husband that night or threatened him with a weapon. The defense chose a self-defense strategy. Joseph Ferlazzo himself took the witness stand, a risky move that, as it turned out, proved fatal to his own case. He told the jury that Emily was not a gentle person. "I wouldn't call her tender," he said. He described his wife as aggressive, claiming she had hit and kicked him. And then he introduced a version that had been entirely absent from his initial confession, that Emily had pulled a Taurus pistol from under the pillow and said, "You're done." The prosecutor immediately pointed out the contradiction. Why was this critically important detail, a gun, a threat to his life, never mentioned 3 years earlier when Joseph gave his confession? His answer, "I don't remember talking to the police," and "memories come back in flashes," sounded unconvincing even to his own attorneys. Investigators presented DNA analysis data and cell phone records. DNA on the knives and recovered bullets matched Emily's DNA. Photographs from inside the camper, shown to the jury, revealed the full scope of what had occurred: bloodstains, a saw, a bottle of bleach, garbage bags. Cell phone data confirmed that after the killing, Joseph had been sending messages from his wife's phone, simulating a conversation. The trial lasted a week. Both sides presented their arguments. The prosecution offered facts, physical evidence, the video confession, expert testimony. The defense offered a single line, self-defense. But the facts spoke for themselves. 2 shots to the head of a woman who was lying down or asleep. 18 stab wounds inflicted after death. Dismemberment. 3 days of pretending to search. A calm breakfast with relatives just hours after the killing. Not a single element of this picture fit the narrative of self-defense. On December 12, 2024, after closing arguments from both sides, the jury retired to deliberate. It took them roughly 5 hours. For a first-degree murder case, that is a comparatively short time, a sign that the evidence was convincing to the jurors. The verdict was unanimous. Guilty of first-degree murder, the most serious category of charge, carrying the maximum penalty. The jury entirely rejected the self-defense claim. When the foreperson read the verdict, quiet sobs broke out in the courtroom. Emily's family had waited more than 3 years for this moment. Sentencing took place on April 24, 2025. The courtroom in Burlington was packed. Emily's family and friends came wearing red shirts bearing her name and the words, "Love shouldn't hurt." One by one, Emily's loved ones stepped up to the microphone. Emily's father, David Bass, addressed the court. In October 2021, my daughter was murdered, and then it got worse. The murder was the worst day of my life, but it was the destruction of my remaining family and the daily suffering that created my post-traumatic stress response. His words captured something rarely discussed in the context of homicides. The crime doesn't end with the victim's death. It continues to destroy the lives of those left behind. Emily's mother, Adrienne Boss, spoke via video recording. The courtroom was shown photographs and videos from Emily's life. A girl in striped shirts, dancing, singing, hugging animals. Those images reminded everyone present of the person Emily had been, and of exactly what Joseph Ferlazzo had taken from the world. Judge John Pacht spoke words that became central to this case. Emily Ferlazzo had a beautiful, beautiful voice, and I don't just mean her singing, which we heard today. The judge then turned to the character of the convicted man. He noted the chilling detachment of Joseph Ferlazzo, a quality that manifested in every action he took after the killing. It is a detachment that allows him to have a pleasant breakfast with his sister 8 to 9 hours after killing Emily. A detachment that allows him to have a steady enough hand to tattoo for 3 hours, and then to again spend time with his sister and have a friendly conversation by the fire that same evening. The judge stated plainly that Joseph's testimony at trial had been false. The testimony Ferlazzo gave at trial was untruthful. His testimony about how this crime occurred and what followed is not credible. The prosecution requested 50 years, the maximum allowed under Vermont law. The defense asked for 15 years, citing Joseph's lack of prior criminal convictions. The gap between these figures, 35 years, reflected the chasm between how each side viewed the case. Judge Pacht weighed all the arguments and handed down the sentence, 42.5 years in prison. It was a sentence as close to life as possible, considering that Joseph Ferlazzo was 45 years old at the time of sentencing. Simple math meant he would be released if he lived that long, at roughly 88 years of age. Emily Jean Ferlazzo was 22 years old. She dreamed of becoming a nurse. She loved to sing, to dance, and to travel. She had her whole life ahead of her. Instead, she became one of the thousands of women killed by their partners every year. According to the United Nations, an average of 137 women are killed by current or former partners every single day around the world. Emily became one of them. Her mother sensed the danger, friends saw the bruises, but the system didn't act in time. A quick courtship, a rushed wedding, isolation, control, violence. The escalation was textbook, almost by the manual, and yet Emily, like so many other victims of abusive relationships, stayed. Not because she was weak, but because she believed that love could change everything. She was 22. Joseph Ferlazzo Jr. is serving his sentence in a Vermont correctional facility. His earliest possible parole date is decades away. Investigators from Pennsylvania, working the unsolved murder of his stepmother in 2009, contacted Vermont police after his arrest. Officially, no charges have been filed in that case. Emily's family turned their pain into action. The words on their red shirts, "Love shouldn't hurt," became more than a slogan. They became a message for anyone who might find themselves in a similar situation. The dream of roaming Rosie, of a free life on the road, of traveling the East Coast, died with Emily on a dark Vermont road in October of 2021. But Emily's voice, that beautiful voice the judge spoke of, keeps ringing, in the memories of those who loved her, and in this story, which should remind everyone, if you see signs of violence in the relationship of someone you care about, don't stay silent, because tomorrow might be too late.